We're live, I think, right? Ty?
Season's
yes?
over. Season's over.
Season's over.
Crazy. Wow. All right. We just did a long stream.
Yeah.
Throughout the course of this game. No studying required.
Did you do a long stream after the game ended too?
That was at halftime.
In your bathroom? Okay.
That was at halftime. I'm good right now. I'm good. I've been drinking water all game. So look, Michigan's the national champion.
Yes.
We're going to record our season recap podcast, our game recap podcast, not the season. We'll do that later.
Yeah.
I need everybody to hit like. I need everybody to hit subscribe. If you've yet to find the podcast and add it to your arsenal, I would encourage you to please go on to Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever it is you listen on. Make sure you find the show.
Yes.
Hit follow, hit subscribe. All this stuff helps us. We will be with you in the off season. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that throughout the course of the episode. But Dan, let's count this guy in.
I'm ready.
Count it in from 3, from 2. Dan Rubenstein.
Yes, sir.
Michigan Wolverines, your 2024 college football national champions. They knock off the Washington Huskies by a 34-13 margin. We did a very long live stream throughout the course of this game. We had a chance to chat with hundreds, if not thousands of footballers throughout the course of the evening, all of them celebrating the game that was the college football national championship. We get to do this again for another season. It was a pleasure, as always, to do it with you. And, of course, with the Verballerhood going out to Apple, to Spotify, to whatever podcasting app of choice is in your life. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe. And for those who are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe there as well, Dan. How are you, my good friend?
I'm good. Still piecing together my thoughts on the game itself, which we're going to talk through together, but good. I mean, I don't know what the correct adjective to use in this moment is for Michigan's season, for the college football season as a whole, for this playoff. I'm grasping at the moment, Ty, if that counts as a good answer to your question.
Michigan won this game in resounding fashion down the stretch. It was a game that, in my eyes, was defined by two big plays early, two big running plays in the first quarter by Donovan Edwards, which set Michigan up nicely for the remainder of this game. Outside of the first 3 drives, Michigan sort of stalled out. They had moments late where they padded the lead, but this was a game that very much was defined by what happened in the first quarter. After that point, Washington felt at times like they were getting some of the momentum back, but in the end, Michael Penix reached back for the pixie dust, and frankly, I don't know if he could reach back for much of anything. I think he hurt his ribs. He was not right for a good chunk of this game. And as the game wore on, Michigan was able to do what Michigan does. Michigan got 2 interceptions. Michigan was able to change the game with its defense. Michigan was able to play the style of football in the end that I think we expected they would try to play. They ended up running the ball like 38 times. Didn't try to do a whole lot through the air. In the end, they didn't have to. They're fine with winning ugly.
Yeah.
They're your national champions.
Yeah, it was a fascinating game, and we had talked about this coming in, that Washington is going to have to play at a certain level, especially on offense, because honestly, over the course of this game, they improved defensively. It started out as a sprint, and then it became kind of a distance race, right? That just sort of like picking your moments to speed up, slow down. Washington did a good job adjusting to the Michigan rushing attack, keeping the Michigan offense largely in front of it. The problem is Michigan had more ways to win, something else everybody has spoken about because of the defense and what that affords a team when they're able to generate pressure, when you have corners as sticky as, Mike Sanders-Still, Josh Wallace, and of course Will Johnson on the Washington Winter Wonder wide receivers. That was pretty good by me, by the way, to knock that out in 1.5 takes. It was an arrhythmic game for long stretches, but certainly if you're going to point to a single thing that decided the game, it's the Michigan defense, and if you zoom in even more, it's probably the Michigan front for completely overwhelming the supposedly very strong Washington offensive line. But I really, especially look at the inside of that Michigan line, they overwhelmed them once again. They overwhelmed the Washington offensive line, and that's the major difference. You can look at Dylan Johnson's entry, which is a worthwhile thing to look at. You can look at Michael Penix and some overthrows and some just miscues going downfield. But ultimately, what Michigan did in building this team and developing this defense was the difference.
Yeah, I mean, we tweeted out a stat earlier in the game from our account that at whatever point in time we sent it, Mike Penix was 1 of 7 on throws of 15 yards or more. He finished the game 2 of 12 on throws 15 yards or more. He had the longer throw, the 44-yarder to Roma Dunze late when the game was, I think, pretty much settled.
Yeah.
But, that to me really signifies where this game was won and lost. Won on the Michigan side to prevent that style of play from the Washington offense. We know that's how they got a lot of success against the Texas defense, right? They prevented that. They did not allow that to beat them. And on the Washington side, that is something they have leaned on all year, that pinpoint accuracy that we talked about in the preview that Michael Penix has shown. I don't know if he was hurt. I don't know if it was the Michigan defense just stepping up in a really big way because of the sticky corners. My hunch is it was some combination of both.
Yeah.
But he wasn't right. He wasn't right. So whether it was the defense changing his rhythm, whether it was an injury that was preventing him from being as accurate as he wanted, there were some really big throws in this game that he missed. And there were a couple early in particular. There was a surefire touchdown, I believe, to Roma Dunze early in this game that he flat out missed. Throws like that were ones that Washington would have needed to get back. They would have needed to complete all of them, frankly, in order to contend with Michigan here and end up winning this football game. So not having that at their disposal, Dylan Johnson got nicked up on the very first play. It was good to see him out there, but he got nicked up on the very first play. So whether it was Dylan Johnson, Michael Penix, the line having to contend with the Michigan front, it just seemed like as the game wore on, a lot of what Washington wanted to do was at a supreme disadvantage when up against Michigan. And so for me, that was it. For me, it was, as you said, the Michigan defense that changed the game, the Michigan defense that held the wide receivers in check on the Washington side, the Michigan defense that, maybe injured Mike Penix to upset his rhythm. I don't know. But I think it started there for the Wolverines. They won the game in sort of an ugly way, but exactly the way that they wanted.
Yeah, no, look, and how many points does Washington score in this game?
13.
So Michigan essentially beats them with their performance almost immediately, scoring those 14 points via Donovan Edwards' long run and some Washington miscues on defense, not filling lanes, not filling gaps. And it's not quantifiable specifically, but this is the third straight playoff for Michigan. This is the third straight year in which they were able to overcome a streak of losses to their biggest rival. And so when you have that kind of seasoning, not just as older players go, 4th, 5th, 6th year players, but the fact that they are tested with this kind of spotlight for this kind of moment, whereas this is year one for Washington in a spot like this. Now, they rose to that occasion against Texas, but this is an even bigger stage. Yep. And with how Washington came out on both sides of the ball and with how Michigan came out on both sides of the ball, I sort of sense that Michigan was better prepared to meet the moment immediately. Washington settled down, which really strong teams do, but those 14 points were enough to beat this Washington team. And whether those are mental errors, whether it's, players getting a little bit over jumpy and, overrunning a play, whatever it was, Michigan was ready. Michigan was ready to take care of business from the jump. And even with their own mistakes, even with their own stretches of inconsistency and weird play calling and going away from tight end play, going away from, merely catching balls and not dropping them, some of those bigger moments and those higher leverage moments, Michigan was pretty bad for most of this game on third down. No. But, and not to borrow Washington's exact line, but winners win. And what Michigan proved is that even in a game with a down, middle 2/3, it's the fast start and it's the ability to close. And that seemed to be the mental difference in this game.
Yeah, it was 14-3 at the end of the first quarter. Washington chipped away a little bit. It was 17-10 going into halftime. But again, a 17-3 spread throughout the duration of the second half in favor of Michigan. They scored 14 points to close things out in the fourth quarter. This is a really interesting season for the Michigan Wolverines. I mean, to put this in context, the Connor Stallions thing was the story this season. It was the story. I'm not going to sit here and say that they won because of cheating. I don't know if I honestly believe that. It may have helped, but this is a good team. This is a good team coming into the season. And I hope that this is not one of those deals where you have people writing columns now that the team won because it cheated. I don't think that's why Michigan won. That being said, this is a cloud now that is going to persist over the Michigan program until the NCAA gives some clarity on where things stand. My hunch is that the NCAA tries to take this away.
Okay.
You know, they go the vacation route and they scrub this one from the record books. You know, we watched it. We saw it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really semantics to remove it from the record books altogether. But this program's going to change, I think, a fair amount, not just with a bunch of guys going off to the NFL. Jim Harbaugh sounds like he's also headed to the NFL. If the NCAA comes down with the hammer on this program, things are going to change a lot in a hurry. So that's maybe something we could talk about in the off season. I know just from doing the streams, I know certainly from doing the podcast all season, people were very mixed on how to feel about Michigan.
Sure.
Because of the cheating scandal. And you either came down very harshly on the Wolverines and thought they should have been banned from playing in the postseason at all, or you kind of took a more like, I don't know, dismissive approach, frankly, where, well, Connor Stallions isn't with the team now.
Right.
And it's still a team of really good players and good coaches, and they deserve to be here, even if there were some shady moments this season. It was a very polarizing subject in college football. And I'm curious what your take is now on how we view Michigan through that lens or through the lens of the 2023 season, knowing what we know.
I don't have any more information than anybody. I honestly didn't think about it that much during the game. Like, I'm going to watch every single Michigan play and say, they knew it was coming. They knew it was coming.
Right.
They knew it's not. Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very fun way to watch the sport. So we'll see what happens. I assume there's going to be further attention and further news stories, and we'll see what happens with Jim Harbaugh. There certainly seems to be a lot of NFL smoke. But the way I watched this game coming in was basically, I'm very excited to see what this Michigan defense can do against this Washington offense, because I don't care how much or how little you know about what is or is not coming, you have to tackle Rome Odunze. You know, you have to get through this Washington offensive line, which has protected Michael Penix very, very well. You have to bring down Dylan Johnson. You have to actually physically do the things that leads to winning. And so, to me, it was the big story to me was, can Michael Penix be perfect against this Michigan defense? Because whatever the story is with the off-field stuff, whether it's overblown, whether it's underblown, with whatever it comes out, you still need to make plays. And Mason Graham won a lot of hat-on hats. Kenneth Grant won a lot of hat-on hats. And whether there were drops, whether there were overthrows, whatever, it's also something that Michigan can't fully control. And so the game was a fascinating one because you have the immovable object against the unstoppable force. I came away going into the game thinking Washington's very, very good, but also flawed in that they were able to win some losable games, whereas I thought Michigan was able to prove a little bit more over the course of the season. I picked Washington. I picked against Michigan because in the off chance we get nothing but perfect Michael Penix throws, which is kind of what we got last week, then Washington's going to win. If Washington I think they had 3 drives down 20-13 that ended in a punt, right? This was not a game that Michigan controlled comfortably, especially after it seemed, after Donovan Edwards' second long touchdown run, that Michigan was about to slowly, and our term is crockpot, Washington, right? That it was just going to be a slow 37-10 bludgeoning that was never in question. This game was very much in question in the fourth quarter. And it was Michigan building the defensive roster to hang with and dominate Washington's offense, something that teams weren't able to do this year. And so as much as we can question what Michigan was doing off the field or what Michigan was doing on the field, to me, Michigan was a better coached team with better players that didn't necessarily rise to that many more moments, but they won the moments that mattered more often in this game. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to come of the off-field scouting thing for Michigan, but I didn't get any more information about it during this game.
Yeah, and I mean, I bring that up not to rain on anybody's parade.
No, I know.
If you're a Michigan fan, you should very much celebrate this. And if you're a Big Ten fan, maybe outside of Ohio State, you should celebrate it too, because it's an accomplishment anytime a team from the South doesn't win the title.
Yeah.
All right. But it is also, I think, the first thing that many of our listeners think of when they think of Michigan. The reaction is, oh, they cheated.
Sure.
And so it's a very, very interesting fork in the road for a college football fan to come down on how they feel about this. I think I stand with you on the Michigan side. And it's not just because I picked them in the preseason, but what we saw out there was not so much the product of a Connor Stallions thing, a sign stealing thing. They were very good. They're very fundamentally sound on defense. We saw a lot of this last year. So this has been building for a while. And as you've said time and again, a lot of arrows were pointing to this season for the Michigan Wolverines.
If you want to rain on Michigan's parade, what you should say is Alabama both won and lost this season, right? That like Alabama beating Georgia was the best thing that could have possibly happened to anybody in the college football playoff. Alabama is a more flawed team than Georgia, but won that game. And if you were to give Jim Harbaugh or Sharon Moore or Jesse Minter or any of these guys truth serum, they were thrilled to get Alabama and not Georgia. And maybe that's a conversation for another day. That's how, if I were to choose to rain on Michigan's parade, thank God for Alabama that day in Atlanta, because they were the more beatable team that happened to beat Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, things are funny the way they work out.
Yeah.
But Michigan was pretty solid here. This was not any kind of offensive explosion. This was a couple big plays early that set the tone. This was a defense that was, for the most part, impenetrable. I mean, only gave up 13 points against a really good Washington Huskies offense.
Definitely.
A lot came down on the arm of Michael Penix Jr. Again, 27 of 51. 255 in a losing effort. I won't play the sound. It'll feel like I'm rubbing it in because he was definitely
I don't think it was even. That's not even that impressive a number. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's just pure attempts, right?
Yeah.
That was just a lot of bites at the apple for Mike Penix. And this was a Michigan defense that got the job done. Short of two really nice pass plays in the second half for the Michigan offense, J.J. McCarthy had like 70 yards passing. This was not a game they were ever going to go out there and try to air it out to win. Unless they got down, this was Blake Corum is going to be the stake, and he's going to get most of the rushing attempts and 2 touchdowns, which he did. Donovan Edwards ended up being the sizzle. 2 long touchdown runs early that set the pace, obviously, for where this game ended up. So 34-13 was your final. Michigan finishes the year 15-0. A lot is going to change next season, not just on the Michigan side with players and coaches and NCAA stuff, but both of these teams are obviously going to be playing in the Big Ten next season. The playoff system, as we know it, is going to be retooled. There's going to be 12 teams next season. There's conference realignment going on elsewhere around college football. There was some scuttlebutt out there that we might even get a preview for the upcoming NCAA video game. That turned out to not be true. But a lot, I think, to look forward to as we go into 2024. The exciting bit for the rest of us is that starting right now, I love this joke, everybody is undefeated.
Everybody's undefeated.
Everybody's undefeated, Dan.
It's it's sort of the end of the end and the beginning of something. As you mentioned, a 12-team playoff and the amount of movement in the sport and the realignment of the sport that's fully going to take hold this coming season. I guess officially all of these teams enter into new conferences on like June 30th or something, or July 1st. It does definitely feel like the end of something. It's the end of the 4-team playoff. It's the end of the regional nature of the sport. And it sort of ends with one of the more familiar powers, one of the more familiar champions winning it all. And so I don't think we're ever going back, but there is that sense of like the college football you grew up with, the college football you've enjoyed these past few years, whatever that looks like in your brain, it's time to reboot. It really seems to be like the end of the end. And it doesn't mean that what's coming can't be great, but it's kind of a mystery about what it's going to feel like, what the unintended consequences are, good and bad. But I did end Michigan-Washington thinking, man, something new is about to start in this sport. Hopefully, I am going to try to be optimistic that there's going to be a lot more good than bad with what is coming. But there did seem, maybe it's just because I'm a West Coast dude and there's some now finality and closure to the Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-8 experience as we know it. But yeah, felt a little bit different with the way this game ended. I don't know what the TV ratings are. I don't know what the energy is going to be like moving forward with this Michigan win. You know, with a coach as recognizable and a program as recognizable, I'm sure it's going to get a lot of attention. It's going to stir a lot of debate. But I don't know. At the end of the day, a bunch of defensive linemen made a lot of plays to win a college football national championship, and that is nothing new at all.
I'd welcome feedback from the Verballerhood.
Yeah.
I mean, you know where to find us out on social media. You can always email us, solidverbal@gmail.com. If you're on verballers.com as one of our Patreon subscribers where you get the bonus content and the ad-free episodes and the like, I'd welcome to hear in our Discord, frankly, what people thought of this game. I haven't had a chance to check it yet. We were doing the stream, but you know, not just this game, but where they come down on Michigan, where Michigan's place is in history now, as we look maybe 5 years back on this one. What will the history books say about this team? How will people judge this team? It's a really, really interesting story, and truly the likes of which we have not seen in the time we have been doing the show. It's just such a unique scenario that we find ourselves in, not just at this weird cusp in the sport where things are about to change very drastically, but one of these controversial moments in the sport that we almost never see, and that team goes on to win the national championship. A lot to really process, and I think we're kind of doing it in real time here, even though we've had a lot of chance to think about it in the build-up to this game. I am curious, though, on the Washington side. I mean, we've talked so much about Michigan and what this means for them.
It was basically a Shawshank win for Michigan, right? Chipping away.
That's exactly right.
Improving. Finally, nope, not Georgia. Nope, not TCU. Chipping away. They get Bama. They get a high-flying offense. They finally break through and crawl through the, what was it, like 5 miles of shit or whatever? Yeah. That's the story.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on the Washington side of things, because we had fashioned Washington as a so-called LRO team many moons ago.
Yeah.
And that was the source of the comparison to TCU. TCU felt a little bit the same way. Now, these are not apples to apples. I get that. People have been tweeting me and emailing us. I get that it's not apples to apples. But purely from the standpoint of, hey, Washington was in a lot of close games, and we're not really sure why. They had that in common. TCU was there a year ago. They got blown out in the title, and Washington didn't nearly get blown out as much.
No.
And could have had a shot at this one late if things had gone a little bit differently. But Washington, I think, Washington defied some odds here this season, given how they played in games against Arizona State, games against, whoever.
Wazoo,
Utah,
Oregon State, Oregon, yeah.
There were many opportunities
Stanford,
for Washington to lose, and they kept finding ways to win. And so the fact that they got to this game, the fact that they were undefeated going into this game, the fact that they were as exciting as they were on offense, I think was a super cool story. Where does Washington go from here? What does the next version of Washington look like now, after Michael Penix, after Roma Dunze, after this incredible contingent of skill talent on offense goes out the door?
I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be a good team. there's not much about the Big Ten, even the new look Big Ten, that does a lot for, I think, many people. Michigan, obviously, their excellence is self-evident. Ohio State will be very good. They added Quinshon Judkins, right? As the game ended, Quinshon Judkins announced his commitment to Ohio State. Penn State just sort of seems to be the same team year in and year out. They reach a certain ceiling, but they can't quite break through. Oregon should continue to get better, but we'll see if they can perform in those big games. And then you have a morass of teams that I think Washington will be largely better than. They add Will Rogers, but look, Kalen DeBoer is a very, very good coach. He wins constantly wherever he goes, whether it's Fresno, whether it's Indiana's offense, whether it's lower levels. He is going to field good teams at Washington that they're going to win much more often than not. I think this was a special year that they were able to figure out moments in a way that other teams weren't, whether it was those close calls, whether it was the Texas game, holding on in that one. Washington is in a healthy, as long as Kalen DeBoer is the coach and as long as they can continue to improve. I know recruiting is on an uptick right now for 2025 and beyond. The outlook is when you have the head coach in place, when you hire well, the recruiting still needs a minute. They're in a really great spot. I don't think they're going to careen off a cliff like TCU did this year. I think he's going to constantly find quarterbacks and help to develop quarterbacks and find skill talent, find offensive linemen. But they're going to take a step back. I think they're going to respond. I think they're going to be in a good place. The story to me is still Michigan, is still whatever happens with Jim Harbaugh, whatever happens with leaving, a succession plan, deciding to come back, J.J. McCarthy's future. But this was the year for both of these teams in terms of circling 2023. And it all comes down to this year, given the number of upperclassmen, given the COVID extension years. And Michigan was much better built to win this championship because they could win in more ways.
It was a talent thing in the end.
Yeah.
It was a talent thing in the end. Michigan was much more of a complete product, especially on defense. Especially on defense. We will talk about that momentarily as we get into our dude alerts.
Yeah.
Especially on defense, the way they were able to change that game, whether it was guys in the secondary making plays, whether it was guys up front along the line beating the Washington offensive line pretty continuously throughout the course of this game. This was a talent advantage for Michigan across the board, and they just had more depth where they needed it. So kudos to the Michigan Wolverines. They finished the year 15-0, 34-13 was your final. If you took my Houston, we have a parlay, I made the mistake that I made a week ago, frankly, with Alabama. I thought they would get over 20 points. And again, another team that does not get over 20 points. Washington only scores 13. Alabama, even in overtime, only made it to 20.
Yep.
And again, this was a lower scoring affair. 47 points in total. They don't quite get to that over-under, which closed at 55.5 points. So if you took Michigan minus the number, if you took the under, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. I think the stat continues that we called out on the pregame that we did, that something to the effect of games where 60% of the tickets, thereabouts, were on the underdog going into the championship game. Those teams were 0-5, now 0-6. As Washington does not cover the
we love an underdog story, Ty. We like talking ourselves into, well, if Michael Penix can. That's the more difficult thing. And that's what came to pass, well, no pun intended, once again, in Michigan, Washington. It's late for me, Ty. It is quite late as we record this. So, yeah, I don't know that there is any defining characteristic of this Michigan team, depending on what happens with the off-field stuff, beyond they had really strong players that played better than their opponent. The Washington defense over the course of the year left some to be desired, and this was the year for a team like Michigan, or whether it was going to be Alabama or whoever was in the playoff. It was a more, not wide open, but I think a little bit of a softer landing spot with what you could do against Washington, with what a number of teams did against Washington.
And just the fact that Washington did not have its out pitch. They could not get the ball in key moments to their best wideouts.
No.
They couldn't do it.
There were moments Kirk highlighted, up the seam, or that Michael Penix was looking to his right because that's where he was starting his look, and then Roma Dunze springs open on the left hand. Like, you can't see every receiver at the same time at all moments. There were moments. Michael Penix has risen to that moment. The offensive line, I honestly don't put a ton of it on Michael Penix. Michigan whipped Washington up front, and
they whipped them. Yeah, they did.
There's only so much you can do in that case. So, yeah, it was a very strong year from Washington, but Washington, as I think we all thought on a certain level, was not of the caliber of the best in the sport when you look at a team holistically, when you look at 100% of its roster. But winners win. And Washington was able to win moments at a much higher clip than quote-unquote better teams. And
some players are good.
Thank you.
Some are great. And some are just dudes. Welcome to Dude Alert, presented by Pristine Auction.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I thought it was a perfect segue to talk about our dudes.
Holistic roster.
I've got dudes from 3 different levels of this Michigan team that I think I want to call out. Mikey Sainristil, Dan. He had a game.
Yes.
A bunch of tackles, bunch of key tackles, had the interception late, ran the ball damn near into the goal, ended up flipping the field, putting Michigan in a position to get this game on ice. He had a really, really nice game. The Michigan secondary as a whole was awesome, but I think he was the headliner from what we saw. Even had a smart interference call earlier in this game where it just made sense to grab a dude.
Yeah.
He did it in a really big way here.
Yeah.
And I
Heads
think
up play.
Was sort of the torchbearer for this Michigan defense. Also up front, we called him out on the broadcast, but just felt like Mason Graham was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
On the Michigan front. Just like, I think a sophomore, like young talent that Michigan has, that they have.
It's a building block. Yeah.
Yeah, have built in as part of like their longer term plan. The fact that they were able again to pull one over on the Washington front in the manner that they did was damn near impressive.
Definitely.
So whether they're changing the complexion of the run game of the Washington Huskies or the passing game and the rhythm of Mike Penix, Mason Graham was a big part of that. And then I got to give a shout out to Donovan Edwards, man.
Oh my God.
Let's talk about Donovan Edwards.
Does nothing all year long, jumps out and wins the national championship right away. Yeah.
I mean, truly, stepping on the gas in the manner that Michigan did early. We were on the stream and we're like, dude, this is over. This is probably over right now, given what we know of this Michigan team and how they want to take the air out of the ball.
Yeah.
Dude Alerts, of course, presented by our good friends over at Pristine Auction, your ultimate destination for signed sports memorabilia. Means you can get signed gear from all these dudes who play on your favorite teams. So just go out there, Google, Google your favorite players from years past and then punch it in over at pristineauction.com or just punch in Michigan Wolverines, Washington Huskies. They've got it all. It's a great site. I'm excited to be working with our good friends over at Pristine Auction. Dude Alerts has been awesome and fun. The bids start at $1. You head on out to Pristine Auction. Use the code SOLID for $10 off your very first win. Again, giving a special shout out to Mikey Sainristil, Mason Graham, and of course, Donovan Edwards, who had the 2 big runs to start things off, Dan.
Agree.
I also wanted to give a shout out to a couple of our verballers who won big and will be getting an email from me about how they can claim some of their prizes, the most exciting of which come from our friends over at pristineauction.com. Everybody who finished in our top 11 will be getting an email from me for how to claim their prize. Again, grand prize winner, and then the next 10 qualify. We had over 1,865 participants in this pool. It was the best Winter Wonders Bowl pool we have ever run. We've got a bunch of people here that I think are going to be excited to get an email from me, most of which picked like 30 games right this pool, which is nuts.
Great job.
Absolutely crazy. Bowl confidence pool. Congratulations to everybody who played and won, and big thanks to everybody who played just to support the show and, compete against us. I have not actually looked up to see how you and I did. I'll wait until I'm feeling a little bit more spry to do that because we didn't do nearly as well as these verballers. But Big thanks to everybody who supported what we did and got in on the Winter Wonders Bowl pool this season,
man.
Dan.
Congratulations to Michigan, all their fans. Huge moment. Been a rocky year.
Been a tough year. Been a important year to have those message boards.
Oh my God.
To have that support.
We've never
group.
been more fortunate. Yep.
If you're a Michigan fan, this is a crazy year on about 1,000 different fronts. That's why we've got the off season. We've got the off season to help us decipher all of that and figure out what it means and put it in context and get everybody ready for the doldrums of the off season and the excitement of the 2024 season ahead. We did get questions about what does our off season recording schedule look like. Our plan is to still go Tuesday, Thursday, as we have for, each of the last 15 seasons. So going out to solidverbal.com, that's our website. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you find out more about downloading our content and learning about verballers.com, where you can get bonus stuff, ad-free content, be part of the community in a way that you aren't from the outside in.
Agree. It's a great time.
Great time. That does it, Dan. Another season in the books. We made it.
I loved this year, Ty. I really did. From the highs and lows of the Big Ten, the Pac-12, the SEC, ACC, Big 12. We're getting a bunch of new look conferences next year, a bunch of great performances this year. We got hirings, firings. Jimbo Fisher is a billionaire now, Ty. I don't know if you actually saw the latest report. It was great. It was a terrific year. Loved spending it with you. Loved spending it with all the Verballers, as always. Can't wait to take a breath and start to make sense of it.
Verballers, stand up and give yourselves a round of applause.
Yes.
I am doing it here. We would not be here without all y'all. It is always fun. We're going to take a breather the rest of this week. We will be back next week. In the meantime, for that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, to the Michigan faithful that have supported this show and have listened for years and years and years on end. Finally, it is your moment. Congratulations. We'll talk to y'all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.